Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2022 Senate elections. We're going to hop right into it and classify the states that I would label as of right now, which is December 28th, as safe Democratic. So some of these states I think, you can kind of make an argument about, like Illinois or Connecticut, but, I don't really see a path for Republicans here, and, maybe in Illinois or Connecticut it falls to 11% or something like that, but it's just not, really worth anything to put Illinois as likely, so I'll have these states as safe. Now, for the Republicans, I'm going to have the Dakotas, Idaho, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Iowa, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Indiana, Kentucky, all as safe. Alaska I'll say is safe too, because I just think the Democrats aren't really going to do anything there. Again, the Alaska Senate race is such a hot mess between Chewbacca and Murkowski, and then, whoever the Democrats are going to run there. But, I mean, I guess whether it's Chewbacca or Murkowski, they're probably going to win by something wacky like 55-37. It could be like a 2016 election repeat where a third-party candidate does quite well, like Gary Johnson did. So I'm not really going to make any bets on Alaska, and I'd highly discourage anyone from making any bets or sure things on Alaska. But what I will say is that I do think it's going to stay red. Now, for the Democrats, their likely states, Colorado's likely. Yeah, Virginia was bad for Democrats, like really, really, really bad. And it did point to a national environment that's like maybe R+6 or R+7, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that November was, again, Biden's approval has recovered a little bit. I mean, it's still not doing great, obviously, and his party's still not in a good position for 2022. But I think we're going to see a bit of a recovery, and polarization is going to help Democrats out in states like Colorado, because, there are going to be plenty of suburban voters who don't like Biden, especially in Denver or those areas. But it's not really going to be enough to tilt the state towards anything competitive or towards shift being a Republican pickup. So if I had to guess, I'd say Michael Bennet wins by 8 right now, but again, we're still 11 months out, so you're gonna have to get back to me in a few months for me to give you a better glance into this race. Now, for the next likely Democratic state, I think that is it. Yeah, the Republicans, Ohio, Florida, North Carolina are all likely. I'll also have Wisconsin as likely, just to kind of get it out of the way. So Wisconsin, I think was actually very flippable for Democrats. For example, Joe Biden was 9% more popular in May than he is now, or was in November at least. So, I think it really revolves around Biden's approval. The Democrats have done very well in Wisconsin in the past 10 years. Even in 2016, they still did all right. They lost a Senate race and a presidential race, but they didn't get blown out. Ron Johnson won by 3 and Trump won the state by a point, and I think House Democrats lost by 3 or 4. But I think this is going to be the worst result for Wisconsin Democrats in the Senate, or at the federal level in a while, because whether it's Johnson or Duffy or Gallagher, I don't really know. I'm gonna have it as likely Republican. I think it doesn't really matter, because Mandela Barnes as the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, I think is going kind of overrated, because he's a lieutenant governor, but he's not. He hasn't won statewide before, and for the Democrats, if they're running someone who hasn't won statewide before, that's really a gamble that doesn't usually pay off. So, I'm not gonna act like this race is a toss-up, because it's not. And I think I'd rather be the Republicans here. It's just that the Democrats have a decent enough base that they can get a chance, but I would expect Ron Johnson to win by maybe 5%, something like that. Now, next we've got Ohio. Ohio, I could easily see falling to, really anywhere. It could fall to 5%, it could go to 15%. Ohio's another tough one to predict, but what I am going to say is that Josh Mandel is a bad candidate for the GOP from an electability standpoint. He's not going to, really run ahead of Trump anywhere, except for rural areas that other Republicans would do even better in, because 2022 is going to be a Republican year. There's no doubt about that, at least at this point in time. Now, whether you want to make an argument about how areas are going to trend, I think that the suburbs, as we saw in Virginia and New Jersey, are going to have at least a little bit of a shift to the right. Rural areas, I think, are going to keep going red. And urban areas haven't really moved, so I don't really think there's anything going on there. But I think the suburbs and the rural, or in the suburbs in the country, are really going to get more Republican. And in Ohio, that means that Republicans are probably looking at better margins in Hamilton County, and they're probably going to flip back Delaware, or get it back to at least a double-digit margin of victory. So I would say that the Democrats aren't going to win Ohio, but it really matters on the candidate, because if it's Mandela and he runs a bad campaign and Tim Ryan runs a good one, this race could be lean Republican. Now, if it's Tim Ginn or J.D. Vance, and if Josh if it's them versus Tim Ryan, I'm sorry, I totally forgot the other name for a second. J.D. Vance or Tim Ryan, and Tim Ryan ties himself or gets tied to the Democratic Party, and Biden's still unpopular, this race could just be like a 15-point Republican blowout, maybe 2016 level, if it gets really bad for Democrats. So, Ohio I think is likely Republican. I genuinely do not see a path to victory for Democrats in Ohio, no matter how hard they try or no matter how bad they want it. Then in North Carolina, again, I think Cherry Beasley is a really strong candidate. But that being said, the Democrats have come so close to winning so many races in North Carolina that I really do not see a realistic path to victory for them here in 2022 or maybe 2024. In that presidential election, unless they run Roy Cooper or Stacey Abrams, but that's another story for another time. But again, the issue that I think the Democrats have in North Carolina is that they have not reverted the suburbs to get to a level, trended the suburbs to get to a level of Georgia or Texas. Because the reason the Democrats are so competitive in Georgia and Texas, sometimes more so than North Carolina, is because the suburbs in Texas, it's Tarrant County, Georgia, it's Gwinnett or Cobb, or counties that were won by Joe Biden. And yet, in North Carolina, Republicans are still doing really well in suburban counties. I'll be honest, I don't know as much about North Carolina as I do about Georgia or Texas, but what I will say is that I know that Biden he did worse in Mecklenburg County, which is where Charlotte is, the largest city, than he did in DeKalb or Fulton, which I know is not the same comparison, but Fulton has plenty of suburbs in the north, and Mecklenburg has plenty in the north as well. So I think that's kind of a comparison you can make. And as a result, of that 15 or 20% disparity, Georgia's blue and North Carolina's not. So Democrats are really close. Excuse me. They come really close many times, but I just think 2022, with a Republican year, the suburbs are not looking good for them. I'd have to bet on a 5 to 6% Republican victory. Florida, Marco Rubio is probably going to beat Val Demings. Actually, he's definitely going to, but I'd say worst case he wins by 3, 4. Best case he probably wins by 10. I don't see people are saying Rubio's going to win by 20. I don't think he's going to win by 20. I think he's going to win by 9, if I'm being honest. Actually maybe 8, because I think Rubio's going to win Miami-Dade. I'll say that right here. I don't think I've said it before, but the way that it trended in 2020, the fact that it shifted 22% to the right, and 2020 was a year that was D+4. Miami-Dade was 27% to the left of the country in 2016, and then in 2020, if I recall correctly, it was 3% to the left. That's a 24% swing towards the right relative to the national environment. If we see if we see a R+4 national environment with that swing in mind, or even just the difference in 2020, which was 3%, because Miami-Dade voted 3% to the right of the country, and if it's an R+4 national environment, it'd be favored to go red anyways. Rubio, I think you could make a very real argument for him to be favored in Miami-Dade County. Now, he doesn't need to win Miami-Dade. Obviously, Trump lost it by 29 in 2016, and he still won Florida. But I think Rubio's going to do really well in Miami-Dade. I think he's going to do quite well in St. Lucie County. He'll probably win all 4 of Pinellas, St. Lucie, Duval, and Seminole. He might lose Seminole. Seminole is the toughest because Demings is from the area, but it's still a Republican year. It's still Marco Rubio. He's still an electoral juggernaut. So If I had to guess, I'd say he probably wins all 4, but it doesn't really matter because he'll be, whether he wins 7 will means he'll win Florida by, either 7 or 9%, right? So he's in a good spot. The bottom line is he's going to do really well with Hispanics. He's going to, run it up in the suburbs. He's going to do, in some precincts of Hillsborough County, for example, I think he might do up to 20% better than Trump. So Florida's going to be really good for Republicans in 2022. Now, going back to the Democratic side, lean Democrat, we're going to put in the state of New Hampshire. So New Hampshire, I think, would have been lean to likely Republican if Chris Sununu ran. Since he's not running, it's lean Democrat. There's not really too much to say here. I mean, I think it's going to be Don Bolduc, if I recall correctly, for the Republicans. But we're still going to have to see how that primary goes. Kelly Ayotte said she's not going to run, but she might run. And if she does, it's probably a toss-up, to be honest. But, yeah, Maggie Hassan's a good incumbent, but New Hampshire is quite elastic. They have some interesting political tendencies. So interested to see how this race turns out in 2022. Yeah, New Hampshire, I would say, is lean Democrat as of right now. It's pretty strong. We have some leans that are like, oh, they're going to win by 2, close to tilt. This leans like a 5-point expected win for Hassan. She's going to run behind Biden. I'd be surprised if she runs ahead of Biden, actually. But it's, she's still a popular incumbent. She's still going to, do fine in many regions. So, I think she'll be okay. Now, for the Republican Party, if we're going to go over to our next lean Republican states, I'm going to put down states of Georgia and the states of Pennsylvania. So, Georgia is really tough for me. Like, I could easily put it in tilt, but I'll go, I'll be bold and I'll put it in lean. And I say this because, look, Raphael Warnock is a really good candidate. I think he's seriously underrated. I think he's a great candidate for Georgia, for the Democrats specifically, and I think that he's going to do very, very well relative to a lot of House Democrats. And even though I will concede that Herschel Walker is a very bad candidate who I think could get his party into a lot of trouble if he loses this race, the partisanship of the state of Georgia relative to the nation is awful for Democrats. Like, there is not a single reason to believe that Warnock is favored if you think the national environment is going to be anywhere close to what I think it's going to be. The only realistic, environment you can make an argument for Warnock to be favored in is maybe D+1. And even then, it's still really, really chintzy because if the environment's D+1, and yeah, Georgia's trending blue, but Georgia still voted 4% to the right of the country in 2020. Like, if it was 2020 and 2020 was a D+1 environment, Trump would have won Georgia by 3. So, I get Georgia's trending blue, and I get the Democrats are going to do a little better in Georgia relative to the national partisanship of the country than they did in 2020. But you have to concede that at the end of the day, it is still often too hard for even strong incumbent senators. Like in 2014, we saw a lot of pretty strong Democrats just get swept because of the national environment. I think in 2022, Warnock's going to be the victim. Look, he's a good candidate, and I think he'll do just fine. But in a year where I think Republicans will win the generic battle by 4 or 5%, he's just not in a position to win re-election. He's not favored, and that's why I have his lean, not tilt. So, regardless of what you think of Herschel Walker, I just really do not see a reason to think that Warnock is favored, unless Walker has a really, really bad campaign, which is possible because he has baggage, he has scandals. So I think Georgia's going to be tight, but I'll give it to Walker to fight against by about 2% right now. Now, going over to the state of Pennsylvania, the Fetterman-Lamb primary is going to be brutal. I think Fetterman's going to win, though, because she's ahead in the polling we've seen, and Lamb doesn't really seem to be gathering too much support or enthusiasm right now. So give me lean Republican here. If it was Lamb, I'd say tilt Republican because I think Lamb's more electable than Fetterman. But John Fetterman is certainly, an interesting candidate because I think he'll either do, he's boom or bust. I think he'll either find a way to do really well in the rural areas for a Democrat and he'll win the race, or he'll implode, and this will be a very bad race for Democrats that will have them scratching their heads for the next 8 years. I think the latter is more likely because 2022 is going to be a really bad year for Democrats, and I think that, whether it's Oz or I'm forgetting the other Republican's name, not Bartos, not Costello. I'm not going to remember it anytime soon. But no matter who the candidates are for the Republicans, I just it's to win Pennsylvania, like, look, the Democrats are not going to do better in rural/working class areas of Pennsylvania than they did in 2020. Like, I get that Trump was a good candidate for Republicans in that regard, but, no matter what happens, those groups have shifted to the right, and I think that they're going to continue to shift to the right for the next few years. Now, in Pennsylvania specifically, that really hurts Democrats because they used to win elections by running it up in, Beaver, Lackawanna, Northampton, which is kind of suburban, kind of working class. I could go on, but I'll spare you. So the point here is that Democrats have lost their ability to run it up in areas like Scranton or York or I'm forgetting the name of the city, Erie. So, as a result of that, they now need to win areas like Chester County by 17. Chester was, it was Clinton plus 9, so it's still a pretty Democratic region of Pennsylvania, but Toomey won it in 2016. And I think congressional Democrats ran behind Biden in 2020 because he won it by 17, and that was really impressive. So, again, Chester, just an example, the Democrats are going to win it, but not by 17, and they're not going to be doing much better in rural/working class areas. So for that reason, I just don't see a path to victory for Democrats without finding many more for Republicans. Like, yeah, they can win here. It's still a state that Biden won in 2020, but 2024 is just going to be such a more Republican year that I don't see Democrats really shifting anywhere in Pennsylvania to the left, like really anywhere. I think it's going to be a small shift, but, if everywhere across Pennsylvania trends 3 or 4% to the right, it's going to be enough for Republican victory, and I think that's what's going to happen. Now, our last two states I think are the closest. They're both to Republican, though. It's Nevada and Arizona. Or Nevada and Arizona, there we go. But, so if I had to be honest, I'd really leave Nevada as a pure toss-up. I do not want to characterize it right now, but I'll give it to Adam Laxalt. I was originally, very anti-Laxalt as a candidate because I think he was going to lose, because I thought he was going to lose. I just didn't see him exciting Hispanic voters or exciting, the rural turnout or getting the rural turnout that Trump needed from areas, that Trump needed to win Nevada that he got, but he just didn't do well in the suburbs. So, I think I was wrong about that. Laxalt's support among Hispanics is still going to be a question because, he didn't do great with them in 2018, but in 2022 was still a D plus 9 year. And Laxalt still, Nevada's in the last state, but, Laxalt still only lost by, 4%. So, if he runs 5% to the right of the national environment in 2022, he'll be fine no matter what happens. But I think he'll run closer. I think, he'll probably run a little to the left of the national environment, if we're being honest, because I think the Republicans will win by 4, and he'll probably win his race by a point or so, just because Nevada's so inelastic that I don't really see too big of a range here. But what I will say is that I think I do expect Laxalt to do very well in rural Nevada. I do expect him to do quite well in the suburbs relative to Trump. I think he'll improve in Henderson, he'll improve in North Las Vegas, and he'll probably improve in Paradise as well. It's just talking about Clark County, because Clark County is so big, really. I mean, yeah, I do fully expect Laxalt to win Winnemucca and Elko and those towns, but what matters more is how well he does in the suburbs, and I think he's going to do that, and I think he'll do just well enough to unseat Cortez Masto. It's really close. It's a pure 50-50. Cortez Masto is a good candidate, too, and I think this is, kind of a battle of two really strong candidates who are both good candidates are both candidates that I could see winning Senate races on their own, but I think the national environment is just going to carry Laxalt barely over the edge. Arizona's my last one. Arizona, I think of these four, of the 4 seats that I have the Republicans, or of the 3 seats I have the Republicans flipping, I would say I'm kind of the least confident in, not in terms of margin. I just think that Kelly's a good candidate, but my rationale is the suburbs are going to shift to the right again, and Kelly had the gift of running against a really bad opponent in 2020, and also having the suburbs basically be handed to him on a silver platter. He doesn't have any of those things in 2022, so I think because of that, as strong of a candidate as he is, I just do not see Arizona staying blue. Again, it's tilt for a reason. It's not safe, Tilt is not safe. But I do think that he's definitely an underdog right now. By how much, I don't know. But I'd say he probably has maybe a 60% chance of losing. So, I think that's it for Kelly. And yeah, this is the map right now. I know it looks kind of... My chair's squeaking. Let me just fix it. Okay. I know that this map does not look good for Democrats, but again, things can change. We could see Democrats start to, Biden could start to recover. They might, because look, Georgia is really iffy. So is Pennsylvania. So is Nevada. So is Arizona. And if Democrats take off 3 of those 4 seats, which I know sounds like a tall order, but it really could happen, then they still have the Senate majority. So I think it's just a Senate majority. Democrats probably still have a 35% chance of getting it just because of how close those 4 states are. But this election could turn into a really big way for Republicans as well. So 2022 is going to be quite a year, quite an election. We're heading into 2022 in 3 or 4 days, 3 days. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you found it informative, and leave a comment down what your prediction is.